This is my first time filming my intro last, and I feel like it's gonna be pretty obvious. Call me Mint. I love crafting stuff. I feel like crafting videos are the most rewarding to make, but they are also the highest effort to make. Usually get in the zone and just focus on crafting and then don't actually like film what I'm doing. But I really wanted to make a video about making a giant flower because who doesn't want a giant flower? I wanted a giant flower, and I didn't want to go to a craft store and spend $40 on one. And I also wanted a purple one, and I've really only seen the mass manufactured ones in like pink and red and white. I hope you try this. Let me know if you do, and have fun. Let me show you how I did it. Materials. Organza. I could choose between polyester and nylon, and I chose the polyester. It's pretty stiff and sparkly. For the leaves and calyx, I got this cool texture, but it is like super, it's super thin. So I'm gonna put it on top of something to add structure. And I think the color and the texture will show through and it'll have a little bit more body. I got some fabric spray paints, fabric glue, oh my God, stem wire, trimmer, and I think I'm just gonna start with this in the middle and make it a base. I thought about using a foam ball, but this was on 60% off clearance, so I'm just gonna start wrapping organza petals around it. I think it'll be an easy, cheap base. I got this to add spots to the petals. I know it's cheap crap, but I think it'll be really cute to add just little tiny speckles. And I got coordinating bubble tea. All very important materials for this craft. I also might end up using like hot glue or whatever other improvised momentary things. I used 3 different sizes of petals, but I only made cardboard templates for the small and medium, and then I eyeballed the large based on how much larger I wanted them to be. When I cut them, I doubled up and then tripled up and like quadrupled up the fabric to cut out as many petals as I could, and I will admit, I kind of threw the exactness of having a template out the window with this method, but flowers are kind of an organic shape, so I think it worked well for my purposes. I aimed to have 10 small petals, 10 medium petals, and 10 large petals, but I think I only ended up using 8 of the large petals, and then it was so crowded that it didn't need to be any bigger. It took a long time to cut them all out. Since this is a synthetic fabric, I was able to really easily seal the edges and keep them from fraying with a candle. I did this all the way around every single petal. I used the little scraps and corners and cabbage and cut out a bunch of little circle petals. I went around the edges of these with the candle as well to keep them from fraying, and I'm going to show you how to make a little tiny flower. First, I lined a row of petals up. I didn't really pay attention to how many, from smallest to largest. Then I stitched them down into that row, and it didn't have to be neat at this part because I was just attaching them, and this is the center of the flower that you won't see. When each petal was kind of stitched into a row, I rolled them up and stitched the bottom shut. Maybe you've seen a technique like this for like pastry flowers or an apple pie. It was really quick, really easy. I stitched a pearl bead in the center because it's just what I had lying around. And I think I'll use this on a brooch or on a necklace or some other little floaty, airy touch petaled flower. Oh, and I put a leaf at the bottom because I had some. Anyways, that's not a part of this craft. That was just a little random aside. And I think it turned out pretty cute, and it was a good way to use some of my scraps. I love to use scrap fabric for other little projects, sometimes to the point that it gets me distracted. I applied fabric glue, just in a line, and then I put the wire into that fabric glue and pushed it into place. Set it aside to let it dry, out of my cat's reach. Here are a number of my petals with wires attached. I just attached them all first and worried about bending them later. The large petals I started with one wire and I really didn't like that they were floppy. So I added 2 more wires to each side on only the large petals. Time for the fabric spray paint to add a touch of color. I loved the fabric spray paint. I think it is so fun and easy to use. I think it would be so cool to make like a gradient effect on another project like this. I was a huge fan of this fabric spray paint. I can't wait to use it again. Oh, I had regular spray paint too. I spray painted the floral wire. I didn't film that, sorry, because I was using like a mask and heavy duty ventilation outdoors for the real spray paint. But I just started wrapping each wire around the flower that I bought to use as a base. I tore the ready-made calyx off of the store-bought flower to have room to wrap my new petals around it. As you can tell, I have very diligent helpers. It looks kind of messy, but I don't really mind because I know that all of this will get covered up. It's looking really good, and I'm on to the medium and the large flowers. I'm just showing off again that on the large petals I added 3 prongs because they're just kind of floppy without them. Wrapping and adding, add a petal, wrap the wire around, add a petal, wrap the wire around. It was so satisfying watching the flower get bigger and bigger, just like it was blooming from a real garden. I'm sitting outside because it's really, really nice today. And if I work on something yucky, I want to be able to do it on concrete. I have the flower here. I'm really satisfied with the size of it. But the thing is now I need to add a calyx because it is just a mess of wire and glue and yuckiness. I made a few leaves double layering the organza and kind of gluing it on a wire. But I'm not the happiest with how these turned out. They're a good start. I think they're a good start. I had a lot of ideas about how I was going to start this and what I was going to add, but I didn't even end up using these little cotton leaves. Oh well. A step that I did but forgot to mention was that I went over and put hot glue on all of the wrapped but exposed wire ends just so they wouldn't be pointy or stick out or be painful if you grabbed the flower wrong. Then I attached this little cloth part. I gathered it as I went so that it would be more narrow at the stem and wider at the start of the flower. I tried this a few different ways, but it ended up to be way easier attaching it to the stem and then stuffing it. Once it was already stuffed, it just kind of became a little bit unwieldy. I stuffed it until it was nice and round, and then I shut it with a touch more hot glue. I think the lack of sewing makes this project more beginner friendly. If you're a fan of hot glue, you could definitely do this. This is where I got really experimental, and I was like, okay, I like the look, but I want to use this shimmery fabric that I bought. So I kind of just, I went ahead and layered it on there. I cut it into some pretty organic shapes. I like, I was being so hasty with it that I went back and dealt with the selvage afterwards. I had my doubts. I don't know why I was filming, because this was just a crazy experiment. And I figured if they were scraps, I'd leave them big enough to do something else with. I ended up using about 3 layers of the shimmery green fabric. And it has such big holes in the netting that I didn't even cut it. I just shoved it over the stem. Then, to secure it in place and keep the volume of the stuffed calyx, tell me why this worked. Tell me, I can't believe this worked out. I secured it with a hair tie. And then another little tiny dab of glue. At first I thought this would be a placeholder, but then the hair tie was so securely done that I didn't even stitch it in place. I just left it like that, and the hair tie's down there. I pulled it out and fluffed it for some volume. But I think it works really well as a calyx, and I probably could have even left out the original stuffed cotton shape. Oh well. There is the flower. My bloom. It's kind of a more stylized, whimsical calyx than anything realistic, but I'm gonna put it on a stick as like a staff and really decorate it when it's as a final project. But here is the flower reveal. Wait, actually I think I need to spray some mica on it, don't I? Be right back. For reference, I just gave it a quick spritz of hairspray and then sprinkled my favorite flashing mica biodegradable glitter over the top. As always, I appreciate you choosing to watch my videos so much. I want to make more crafting videos specifically because they are the most satisfying to share, because I actually feel like I have relevant knowledge to share. Additionally, also they're kind of the most labor intensive to make. So here is my shimmery organza flower that I made. It has little curly leaves and I'm gonna put it on a staff. I chose a shimmery organza, but I feel like this would work with any synthetic fabric or fabric that you didn't have to hem. But also, like, nobody's gonna get mad at you if you use a fabric that frays. So sometimes faux flowers fray. As always, the best way to support my creative endeavors is by checking out my Ko-fi right here. If you just want to keep up with what I'm doing, or if you'd like to contribute and buy me a little $3 equivalent of a coffee, check out my Ko-fi at Undine Designs. And as always, till next time. Boop.